It was supposed to be a celebration. My sister-in-law's wedding brought the whole family together. Lights, music, glasses raised in toasts. But there, in the middle of it all, I saw my wife, laughing too loudly, leaning in too close, touching someone's arm a little too often. When I realized it was her cousin, my heart plummeted. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. I tried to move closer, discreetly, telling myself it was all in my head. But each gesture was a knife twist. The lingering glances, the intimate smiles, the kind of playful banter that didn't belong between cousins. She seemed to forget she was married to me. And there, in front of everyone, I felt myself shrink. I gathered my courage and caught her eye. I asked if we could speak in private, trying not to cause a scene. But she made no effort to be discreet. She turned to me, raised her glass, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If you don't like it, you can leave." The laughter that followed was the final blow. I felt my face burn, as if every pair of eyes at that party was a finger pointed straight at me. This wasn't just a subtle betrayal. It was public humiliation. My sister-in-law's wedding had become the stage where my wife reduced me to nothing. And the worst part? I could see my 12-year-old son in the corner of the room, frozen, not knowing whether to defend me or pretend he hadn't seen a thing. In that instant, I knew something much bigger was at stake. This wasn't just a flirtation. It wasn't just a jealous scene. There were secrets buried in that family, and I was about to unearth them. What began as a night of celebration would become the start of the greatest scandal of my life. When I married her, I believed I was living a dream. She was charismatic, full of life. She knew how to fill a room with her presence alone. In the beginning, she seemed to value me. She spoke of plans, of a future, of a life built together. I clung to her every word as if they were sacred vows. But over the years, the small signs began to appear. Jabs in front of friends, sharp comments about my choices, dismissive looks when I talked about my work. They were barbs disguised as jokes. I would swallow them, offer a weak smile, and try to believe it was just her way of speaking. The problem was, she never missed an opportunity to put me down in front of her relatives. "This is my husband. He can't dance to save his life, but at least he tries." Or, "He has a good heart, even if he doesn't have much of a head for business." Everyone would laugh, and I would laugh along with them, but inside, a knot tightened in my stomach. In front of others, I was always the easy punchline. And every time I tried to talk seriously about how much it hurt, she would retort, "You take everything too seriously. Learn to laugh at yourself." So I would yield. I would fall silent, believing it wasn't worth ruining the mood. Not even our son's presence was enough to stop Carla. She would make jokes at my expense with him right there, as if it were natural to show the boy that his father was nothing more than a laughingstock. And I, swallowing hard, would wonder what he was learning, watching his mother ridicule her own husband. Little did I know, those little jokes were only the beginning. What seemed harmless would become a habit, and that habit, over time, would become systematic humiliation. My sister-in-law's wedding was just the final act of a play that had been rehearsed for years. Over time, I realized it wasn't just about the jokes. At family parties, she seemed to revel in being the center of attention. She would laugh loudly, touch her cousins on the shoulder, and dance in a way that was far too provocative for a married woman. And I would stand beside her, pretending it was all normal while I burned inside. When we got home, I would try to talk to her. I'd tell her it bothered me, that it was embarrassing. Her response was always laced with irony. What? Are you jealous of family now? Or even better, you should have more self-confidence. Nobody looks at me the way you imagine. The truth was, she fed on those looks. The more she sensed my discomfort, the more she exaggerated her behavior. It was as if testing my limits was part of her fun, and I, increasingly, felt like an extra in my own relationship. Her relatives would laugh, thinking it was normal, just Carla being Carla. But I knew. Deep down, this wasn't normal. It was a cruel game that only grew because I swallowed it in silence. And every time I stayed quiet, she gained more ground to advance. My sister-in-law's wedding wasn't an isolated incident. It was merely the public explosion of a behavior she had been practicing for years. And the more I think about it, the more I see that all the signs were right in front of me. I was just the one who refused to see them. The first time I felt that hot shame course through my veins was at a simple family barbecue. Everyone was gathered, cold beers in hand, kids running through the yard. I was talking to my father-in-law when I noticed, out of the corner of my eye, my wife laughing too loudly, touching her cousin's arm as he told some unfunny joke. It wasn't an innocent gesture. She leaned in to hear him better, laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world, and playfully slapped his shoulder with an intimacy that felt wrong. I watched in silence, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But the expressions on the other faces told a different story. Everyone saw it. No one said a word. I took a deep breath and walked over to her. I whispered in her ear that this was going too far. She took a step back, turned to me, and said loudly, "Jealous? Seriously? Of family now? You need to get some help." The laughter from those around us confirmed it. The problem wasn't her, it was me. I walked back to my chair, my face burning. While everyone else carried on with the party, I sank into a silence that no one seemed to notice. That day, I realized it wasn't just about her behavior. I had already lost the respect of her entire family, and when a man loses respect in the very home where he should be welcomed, every gathering becomes a form of torture. I didn't know it then, but that barbecue was just the rehearsal for an even greater shame. The real humiliation was yet to come at my sister-in-law's wedding. After that barbecue, I knew I had to have a serious talk with her. I waited for things to cool down and sat with her at our kitchen table, ready to open my heart. I told her I felt diminished, that her actions were pushing us apart, that I wanted our respect back, not just for my sake, but for our marriage. She listened in silence, never once looking up from her phone. When I finished, she let out a short, sharp laugh and replied, "You dramatize everything. You're always playing the victim. If you can't take a joke, that's your problem." That sentence hit me like a punch. The problem was never her. It was always on me. I tried to insist, to talk about boundaries, about respect. But the more I spoke, the more she shut down. It was as if I were an intruder in my own home. Finally, she dropped her phone on the table and said, "If you're not happy, The door is always open. In that moment, I understood two things. First, she had no interest in changing. Second, if I continued to stay silent, I would be trampled forever. For the first time, a different kind of flame began to ignite within me, not of jealousy or despair, but the bitter realization that the person I loved was reducing me to nothing. It was as if my mind was telling me, asterisk, wait, watch, and prepare, because sooner or later, the bill would come due. And when it did, there would be no laughter, no mockery, no excuse that could save her. She didn't know it yet, but inside me, something had changed forever. After my sister-in-law's wedding, one truth became painfully clear. Carla no longer made any effort to hide her intimacy with that cousin. She laughed loudly, leaned in too close, and exchanged blatant glances as if I were invisible. The cruelest part was seeing that no one else cared. Not her parents, not her siblings. I was just an extra in my own marriage. Until then, I had compensated for her contempt with generosity. I paid for dinners, bought expensive gifts, and solved her relatives' problems as if it were my duty. Having lost my own parents, I had clung to hers, treating them like substitutes I needed to honor. But that night, lying in bed with my mind racing, I realized it was all just a grand performance. I was only useful. The first change was simple. I stopped funding the small extravagances. The credit card bill, which Carla used without a second thought, arrived higher than usual. This time, I left it on the table. She looked at the numbers, then at me, and asked, "Why haven't you paid this yet?" Without looking up, I replied, "Because I'm not your bank anymore. Learn to manage your own spending." The silence that followed was the same kind she always imposed on me. But now, it was she who felt the sting. In the following days, the demands took on a different tone. Carla complained about the car maintenance, the cleaning lady, the household bills. "You always took care of this. What's gotten into you?" This time, I didn't stay silent. "I'm tired of financing someone who has never respected me." She looked at me as if she didn't recognize the man standing before her. The final blow came when my in-laws called one evening. My father-in-law, in his usual placid tone, mentioned that their condo fees were late. "Son, could you possibly take care of this for us? You know how it is. Your mother-in-law had some medical expenses." For a moment, I remembered all the times I had rushed to fix everything for them. But now, I took a deep breath and answered, "I can't. If you can't afford the condo fees, maybe you should rethink your lifestyle. I have my own bills to pay." On the other end of the line, the silence was heavy. My father-in-law cleared his throat and tried to change the subject, but I had made my point. The era of the good son-in-law was over. When I hung up, Carla was standing in the bedroom doorway, glaring at me. "How could you talk to my parents like that?" I looked her straight in the eye and replied, "The same way you talk to me, without any respect." Our son, sitting on the sofa, witnessed it all. He didn't say a word, but I saw the way he looked at me. It wasn't with shame, it was with relief, as if his father had finally stood up after years of swallowing humiliation. And in that instant, I knew. I wasn't just doing this for myself. The revenge I was planning was for him too. After that night, when Carla saw me deny her parents' help, my actions shifted. I canceled the supplementary credit card she used without limit, removed her name from our joint account, and started paying only for the absolute necessities of the house. The rest was now her responsibility. It didn't take long for her to notice. "Where's my card? Is it blocked?" I answered without raising my voice. "Yes, it is. I'm done paying for your whims." Her eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time, she couldn't find a joke to throw in my face. As I was turning off the financial taps, a memory came back to me with force. Months earlier, I'd seen a private detective on a talk show telling stories of infidelity. She spoke of proof, of digital trails, of truths that couldn't stay hidden for long. At the time, I'd found it merely interesting. Now, it made perfect sense. I found the agency's website and filled out the contact form. On the scheduled day, I went to their office. The person who greeted me wasn't the famous detective I'd seen on TV, but one of her employees. He was formal, discreet, and led me to a small room, asking me to recount everything calmly. I told him about the cousin, the parties, the public humiliations, every detail that had been eating away at me. He took notes in silence, only asking pointed questions when necessary. When I was done, he closed the folder and said, "Our job is simple. We follow, we observe, and we document. If there is an affair, you will have proof in your hands." I nodded. I was done with suspicions. I wanted facts. The first few days after the cutbacks were strange. Carla, who had always treated me with disdain, began to change her tune. One evening, she appeared in the living room in a nightgown, hugged me from behind on the sofa, and tried to kiss me in a way she hadn't in a long time. She whispered in my ear, "You've been so distant lately. I miss us." On the surface, she seemed affectionate, but I knew better. It wasn't longing, it was fear. Fear of losing the comfort she had always enjoyed at my expense. It had been years since Carla had looked at me that way, or sought me out like that. Suddenly, just as I stopped funding her life, she decided to feel desire. We had been together for over 15 years, and the generosity she was now offering had long since vanished from our lives. I knew the woman beside me all too well. This wasn't love, it was calculation. It wasn't passion, it was self-interest. I feigned a response with a faint smile, but inside I only confirmed what I already knew. She couldn't stand losing control, so she was trying to manipulate, to seduce, as if she could erase years of humiliation with one night of false tenderness. She failed. My body might have responded, but my heart didn't believe a word of it. I lay beside her in silence, just watching. She fell asleep, satisfied, thinking she had won me back, but she was completely blind. Every gesture she made only reinforced that I was on the right path. A member of the detective's team was already out there, and the truth would soon find its way to me. A few days later, a courier delivered a plain brown envelope addressed to me. There was nothing written on the outside, just a flash drive and a few printed photos inside. I opened it in my car, my hands trembling more from anticipation than fear. I already knew what I would find, but seeing it with my own eyes was another story. The first images were mundane. Carla getting into her cousin's car, smiling, fixing her hair. But then came the ones that erased all doubt. The two of them, walking into a roadside motel together. The car's license plate was clear. The date, the time, everything documented. She was holding his hand, laughing like the 15-year-old girl who had once promised me eternal fidelity. The report described every detail. How long had they been in there? The room they rented, the sequence of their meetings. This wasn't a slip-up, not a stolen kiss. It was a routine. They had been seeing each other for months, and I'd never realized how deep-rooted the betrayal had become. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and closed my eyes. The pain came first, a sharp knife in the gut. But soon, the pain gave way to certainty. From that moment on, there was no more room for illusions. I wasn't a deceived husband. I was a man armed with the truth. When I got home, Carla was in a towel, pretending she had just stepped out of the shower. She smiled. She tried to hug me, playing the part of the devoted wife she never was. I looked over her shoulder, the images from the motel still vivid in my mind, the file resting in my glove compartment. She believed she was still in control of the game, but in truth, checkmate had already begun. With the evidence in hand, I knew the next step was inevitable. But before I made my move, I did something essential. I installed cameras throughout the house. The living room, the kitchen, the main entrance. I wanted everything recorded. I wouldn't give Carla any room to invent an accusation against me when the truth finally came out. The house, at least, was one less problem. It had been bought with inheritance money from my parents. It was mine, and mine alone. It would not be part of any settlement, no matter how much Carla screamed. And with a 12-year-old son, I knew the divorce would have to go to court. But I also knew my boy was old enough to have his say, and I trusted he would choose to stay with me. That night, I sent the detective's evidence to her entire family. Photos at the motel, entry and exit logs, screenshots of their conversations. Every relative who had ever smirked at my expense received the unvarnished truth. This wasn't gossip. It was documentation. Carla was completely and utterly exposed. When she walked through the door, she wasn't calm. She came in screaming, phone clutched in her hand. "Are you out of your mind? You sent that to my family? Are you trying to destroy me?" Her bags and boxes were already lined up in the hallway. I faced her, silent for a few seconds, before I answered. "I'm not the one you're laughing with in bed, Carla. So go to him. You're never setting foot in my house again." She turned pale, but didn't back down. She took 2 steps toward me, shouting that she wouldn't leave, that the house was hers too, that I couldn't do this. Her voice grew louder with every sentence, as if she wanted the neighbors to hear. I discreetly pointed to the camera in the corner of the room. "Keep going, Carla," I said calmly. "It's all being recorded. Every word you say, every threat. You're not going to twist this story." Her face changed. It wasn't regret, but the pure rage of realizing she had lost her final trump card, the power to accuse me of something I didn't do. She tried to compose herself, saying she would stay until a judge decided. Coldly, I retorted, "Cling to whatever you want. The court already has the evidence. Your divorce is already in motion, and your family already knows who you are. You have no more power here." The noise drew my son's attention. He came out of his room, looking frightened. Carla rushed to him, hugging him tightly and crying out, deliberately loud, "See, son? Your father wants to kick me out of our home. He wants to tear us apart." I looked firmly at them both, my voice even. "Don't lie to him, Carla. He already knows. He knows what you did." My son stood motionless, looking at me. I had spoken to him days earlier, had told him the truth, and in that moment, without a single word, he pulled away from his mother's embrace and came to my side. Carla froze. Before she could react, her phone rang. It was her parents, on a video call. Carla answered without thinking, and the first thing I heard was her mother's voice. "Is this true, Carla? Are these photos real? Were you in a motel with your own cousin?" She tried to deny it, but her father appeared on the screen behind her mother, his face a mask of fury. "Don't you dare open your mouth, girl. We saw everything. It's all right here in front of us." She ended the call immediately and threw the phone onto the sofa. She looked at me as if I were the one to blame for her shame. "You destroyed my family." I took a deep breath. "No, Carla. You did that all by yourself. I just showed them the truth." Then she broke down and began to cry. It was an uncontrolled sob, not of remorse, but of pure desperation. Our son watched her from a distance, making no move to comfort her. And for the first time, I realized that he understood too. That performance wasn't for love. It was terror at the end of her comfortable life, the end of the lies she had built. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages from her relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, all reacting to the proof. And Carla finally understood there was nowhere left to hide. The process wasn't over in a flash. After I filed for divorce, there was the summons, the conciliation hearing that went nowhere, and later, the final hearing. There, the judge heard from me. He heard from Carla. And most importantly, he heard from our 12-year-old son. My boy spoke with a firm voice, stating clearly that he wanted to live with me. It was the final blow to any narrative she could spin. The detective's evidence was already on file. Photos, logs, reports. Carla tried to deny, to cry, to play the victim, but with every word, she only sank deeper. The judge was direct. He finalized the divorce, granted me sole custody, and ordered Carla to pay child support. There was no room for debate. Everything was far too clear. The house never even entered the discussion. It was mine, bought with my inheritance. The judge noted it in the ruling, and Carla had to accept it. Her shouting about her rights meant nothing. The law was on my side. Outside the courthouse, Carla tried to stare me down, but there was no longer an audience for her drama. Her entire family had seen the photos. She hadn't just lost a marriage. She lost her support system, the respect of her relatives, the stage on which she had always belittled me. She ended up clinging to her cousin, as expected, but it brought her no victory. Shortly after the ruling, Carla left the house. She departed with her boxes and bags, without a look back, forced to accept that custody was mine and the house had never been hers. Then she tried to play the lowest card possible. She quit her job just to avoid paying child support, but the court didn't fall for it. The obligation remained, and the one who started footing the bill was her cousin. That created the first real crack between them. Her partner in laughter became a bitter creditor. supporting not only Carla, but also the child support she was trying to dodge. I heard that the pressures of adult life were taking their toll, leading to more and more frequent fights, especially in front of others. They were no longer invited to family gatherings, and on the rare occasions they showed up, my son told me they were met with cold stares and clipped conversations. Speaking of my son, he never forgave his mother either. Their relationship went from bad to worse, entirely her fault. He told me, in no uncertain terms, that he was disgusted with her, not just for being with another man, for deceiving me and destroying our family, but for trying to abandon her responsibility to care for him. From that point on, even the court-ordered visits became a burden. What was once a bond became just another bitter reminder that Carla had chosen the lowest possible path. In the end, Carla didn't just lose a marriage. She lost the house. She lost her son's respect, and she became a burden, even to the cousin she used as her accomplice. The revenge was complete. She had tried to humiliate me, but it was she who ended up exposed, rejected, and forced to live off the scraps that were left. I didn't forgive. I didn't let it go. I fought back. And today, every time I look at my son by my side, I know I served justice with my own hands. So tell me, in my place, would you have swallowed the humiliation, or would you have done the exact same thing? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment below. What would you have done differently? I'll see you in the next story of betrayal and revenge.